You're joining the Imperfectly Happy Homeschooler. Each week, your host, Tiffany Davis, brings her sincerity, humor, and nearly 2 decades of homeschooling experience to encourage and inform you, no matter where you are on your homeschooling journey. Now let's join the show.
Welcome to the Imperfectly Happy Homeschooler. This is your host, Tiffany Davis. I'm excited today because I'm going to get to meld 2 of my favorite things together, homeschooling and homesteading, into one show. My guest today is Angela England, a homeschooling and homesteading mom in Oklahoma. She's also the author of several books, including Backyard Farming on an Acre, More or Less. You might also know her as the Untrained Housewife. Today, she's going to share some tips on the lessons our children can learn from bringing our backyard farm into our homeschool. She's also going to be sharing a little bit about her homeschooling companion book to the Backyard Farming on an Acre, More or Less. It's a book that I've really enjoyed, and I think you will too, whether you're currently a homesteader or a homeschooler right now. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thanks, Tiffany. It's great to be here.
I'm excited because I think it's an important topic that homesteaders and homeschoolers want to hear more about, because we want to meld these 2 things together. I know that I really do, and it's something I was really excited about finding out after reading your book, that you had this companion that went along with it. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how many children you're currently homeschooling?
Sure. Well, I grew up homeschooling. I actually grew up in Southern California, and we kind of started homeschooling before it was cool. I was in 3rd grade and actually got the question on a science test incorrect because I refused to answer it according to the textbook, and I answered it according to my belief. And when the teacher marked my grade wrong, I was so upset. And so my mom said, well, you should write a paper explaining your point of view. So I wrote a 3-page report, which for a 3rd grader, I mean, hello. It was a 3-page report with footnotes and references and resources and, journals that I went to the library and looked up, and I, put them as a footnote. And she refused to give me credit for the report and continued to count my grade wrong, which is what made my mom really upset. She was like, even if you count that question wrong, you could give her, extra credit for this extra work that she did. This is an accurately written scientific report, whether you agree with the findings or not. And the teacher refused. And in the course of that argument, made the comment to my mom, and if you think you could do a better job teaching your daughter, then why don't you just school her yourself?
Oh.
Of course, for someone like my mom was kind of like, actually, I could. So thank you very much. I will. And thus began my homeschooling adventure as a child in 4th grade, and went all the way through high school and into college. I went to, a traditional state university, first a 2-year and then a 4-year. And I always appreciated the hands-on experiences and the intentional opportunities that I had because I homeschooled. So when my oldest started to be around 4 years old, it kind of just came to a head for me, and I realized, he is not going to thrive in a traditional school environment, and we just started homeschooling. My husband and I went the summer he was 4 to a homeschool convention and listened to all the speakers, checked out all the curriculums. I was astounded at all of the resources that are available now that weren't necessarily available when I was doing this. So that was nice to see the shift in culture.
So what ages are you homeschooling right now?
I've got a 9-year-old, just turned 9, 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And then I also have, just tagging along for fun, a 3.5-year-old and a just turned 2-year-old.
Oh, that's great. Now, how are you including your homesteading lessons into your homeschool? How long have you been doing that?
Ever since we had kids. In fact, most of them probably start learning just through the hands-on everyday activities before we ever sit them down at the kitchen table with a pencil. My 5-year-old knows almost all of his letters, even though he's only, 3 lessons into his My Father's World kindergarten curriculum, just from being with us and being part of our daily routine. They're part of our daily activities too. So when we collect the eggs, we're counting the eggs and we're dividing that out, how many chickens are laying each day compared to how many chickens we have. And, all of those kinds of things lead to some really fascinating conversations. My 5-year-old actually is the one that recently initiated the sex talk in our family, because he put 2 and 2 together with the eggs and the chickens and the fertilization and how many eggs could hatch because they had a rooster and how many eggs could not hatch because those chickens were not in with a rooster. So, they're smart kids. They ask questions, and when they do, we answer them honestly and thoroughly. And I think that just that every day, connecting that kind of information to the world that they are experiencing provides them with a level of knowledge, because it's part of who they are. It's part of their worldview. And so that knowledge is inherent within them, and it's something that they have a ready grasp of. Then when they study these complex concepts out of a textbook, they're able to really get hold of those concepts and really take those concepts to heart, instead of just having these abstract techniques that don't mean anything in the real world.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your backyard farming, the book, and then also how it relates to your homeschool companion that people can download.
Sure. Well, backyard farming on an acre, more or less, it started out they found me through Untrained Housewife, which the whole point of that website is really helping people recapture their lost art. It's all of the things that you didn't learn from your mom, and now you wish you knew them. We used to pass that information down through the generations, and we kind of stopped doing that a couple generations ago. And backyard farming, of course, is this resurgence of small-scale self-sufficiency. And I think it really appeals to homeschoolers because we're already doing it ourselves. We're not relying on the built-in government-run system for educating our children. So I think we're naturally more prone to question the built-in system for our food model as well, and to realize that if the educational system is less than ideal in these ways, then the food system is probably equally less than ideal in its own unique ways. And that's why I think a lot of homeschoolers are so fascinated with this backyard farming concept.
And so how did you get the homeschool companion, or what motivated you to write that as an addition to the book?
I think because I am homeschooling myself, I am very sensitive to the whole living on one income thing, and how costly it can be when you adopt all of these expenses for your own self. And so I wanted to do something that would be a blessing to homeschoolers and provide an additional way for them to use my book in a really practical way, where they felt like they were getting some solid educational tips for, how to bring your family along with this journey. You're not going to be successful with adopting a new lifestyle unless everyone in your family is really kind of getting on board with you. And the best way to do that with kids is to give them a sense of ownership over it. So one of the activities in here is to have your kids help plan out the garden. And, for the little guys, it might be as simple as you go through some garden catalogs and they clip out the pictures that they like and put it in their garden journal. And for the high schoolers, then they're measuring your garden space and plotting out, okay, if we have this many feet by this many feet, then how many square feet do we have, and how much food can we grow if we grow these kinds of crops? And so they're doing it on a much more sophisticated level, suitable to their, skills and abilities and age. But then the little guys can also join right in, and so they're, cutting the pictures out of the magazine or whatever. And one of the things I had the curriculum developer do when she was working on this project with me is that we followed the book. So there's 5 main sections in the book. There's kind of the why this is important and how to get started part section, and there's, I think, 3 chapters in that. There's the gardening part, covers all of the gardening topics. There's the animal, which covers all of the livestock. There's the kind of how to use these things and preserve the bounty, dehydrate your food, how to can, simple tutorials for that. And then there's the, like, above and beyond how you can actually use these things in everyday life. I include a cool craft on, how to make lavender lawns, which you can do with other herbs as well, but lavender is the one everyone thinks of, and, how to make soap and, these different kinds of things. So you're really taking it not just from the garden, but then, I include some recipes that are seasonally based. And I think helping people figure out how to incorporate these concepts into their entire life, well, homeschooling is, if you're a homeschooler, everything you do is part of that experience and part of that life. So it made sense to have a homeschool companion guide. And, one of the decisions I made pretty early on was to offer that for free and not charge for that piece.
And I really appreciate that because we are a one-income family as well, as most homeschoolers are. So it's nice to have that option. Let me ask you, what kind of feedback are you getting from other homeschoolers that have used your guide?
Really positive feedback, in fact. And I have a friend who writes she's, online friend who writes for me on Untrained Housewife. And she went to a homeschool curriculum fair in Virginia or Philadelphia or somewhere where I have no physical connection. And she went to a homesteading and homeschooling workshop. And they put my book and my website up on the slide. And the speaker was talking about, these are great resources. You should really check it out. And she's got this guide, and it's free when you get the book and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, I know her. And then instantly, like the class, she said, it just like melted down. Oh, my God, you know her. You're famous by connection. And it was so funny because, I'm just this like homeschooling mom in Atoka, Oklahoma. And so it was really crazy. It was kind of a cool moment that this person I had no connection to was, like I go to those workshops to learn how to do stuff. And then there she was putting me up there as, a resource to investigate. So that was a really interesting moment for me. One of the things that I have to give a shout out to Susan Mueller, who helped me create this book. And she is the founder of educatingtoday.com, which really is an amazing resource. She has helped develop curriculum and write articles for homeschoolers for years. And she's been homeschooling for over 24 years and, multiple kids, multiple years. And I really felt like I needed somebody who had that experience with the wide age ranges to help me when I was putting this guide together, because I really wanted it to be as useful as possible. So she came right on board with me, and she did an amazing job of helping me hone in my vision and make it come to life.
Well, and I really like that each part has something from preschool age all the way through the high school age, so that you can, it's sort of that all-encompassing unit study approach that everyone in the family can do it. And really, if you're not a homesteader, I think you can be reading the book as an adult, learning the skills as you're learning them with your children, which is, I think, a great way to make this a family project. So I think that's great that she was able to give you the broad perspective on all the different levels. And I will put that link up on the show notes as well. Now,
sure.
I've got a question for you. Do you have any suggestions on how families can keep transcripts if they decide to go through the companion and use it in their homeschooling? How may they use that in their transcripts? Because not all states are as easy to homeschool in as Oklahoma and Arizona. So they might need them more than we do.
Right. And sometimes you can contact your county extension office as a really great resource for this kind of thing. And they may actually be able to tell you kind of what the high schoolers are doing for ag science in that age range, because, especially in rural areas, that's a really common elective for kids to choose over, maybe wood shop or automotive or something like that. They're taking ag sciences because they're going into an agriculturally based field. And so they may even have some good records that would be coming from the county level that you could then use, and the state would obviously accept because it's a government resource. So that might be something to keep in mind. The other thing that I would say is the same thing that I tell gardeners in the book: keep a record of everything. You want to have that anyway from a really practical perspective. Which mom had which baby goat again? I can't tell because there's 15 goats running around in my backyard. I don't know which one came from which. So you have to write that down, and you have to know when they were born because the vet needs that information if he breaks his leg a year down the road. They want to know the age of the goat. They want to know the condition of the goat. And so, good record keeping is just flat helpful. You can't assume that you're going to remember year to year. Keep a garden journal and show your records, and anything that you can write down what your kids are experiencing. Keeping a garden is a grand science experiment to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so, I give in the back of the book, Backyard Farming book, I have garden journal pages, which I had specifically designed for the book. I hired a designer to create them. And one of the things that I did was have the publisher give permission for copies to be made. And I also have those pages available as free downloads on backyardfarmingguide.com so that people can download extra copies. And just keep a monthly record. What was your weather like that month? How did the garden respond to that? Were there pests this year that you need to plan for next year? Well, then maybe your kids tasked 5 natural ways to kill squash beetles. And, you have them write up a little paper about it. So don't just have him research it and then build a squash bug trap. Take some pictures and, make a science experiment out of it, and then keep a record. How many squash beetles did this kind of trap kill, and how many squash beetles did this kind of trap kill? And does placement affect how many? If it's close to the fence line, do you get more because they're crawling down the fence into the trap? Let them ask those kinds of questions, and that's, as much of a science experiment as any science project you're going to find in high school classes nationwide. And when you track and monitor and record, then you've got that recorded proof.
And I wanted to ask you another question. You've had some great tips for us thus far, but let's say that you're not on an acre, not even on a quarter of an acre, maybe just have a large yard. Do you think that the tips in your book are still applicable to someone that's working on a very small scale, both as a homesteader and as a homeschooler?
Oh, very much so. Obviously you might not be able to keep a goat in your backyard lest your neighbors get mad at you. They're already mad because your kids are outside playing at noon anyway, but you don't need to add goats into the mix. It's interesting because one of my most raving fans about the book lived in an apartment building, and she really liked that the book gave her something to aspire to while also giving really practical tips that you can use now. Anyone can garden. If you can bring a square foot of dirt in a container onto your front porch, you can have a garden. It just might not be very big. But at that point, it's all a size of, it's all a matter of scale. So you start out small, and you start out with what you are able to do at this time, and you go from there. I know families that their financial situation was such, she couldn't fully quit a job, and so she worked part-time. So her kids were still in school, but she worked part-time, and so she did homeschooling activities with her children in non-school hours just to help supplement because she knew what the kids were lacking in with what they were getting in school. And so I think, for all of us, we're just making the best of the situation that we're in right now and trying to be strategic about how to move forward to the next step. It's really easy to say, my life is chaotic. My husband's schedule is 4 days on, 4 days off. And so my kids never are doing school on the same, set of days every week. I'm ruining them. I'm destroying their sense of routine, and they're never going to know how to study. They're not going to be prepared for the workplace. My kid is 9 and I failed already. It's really easy to get into that mindset and, watch the Duggars and think she's got it all together. But I have a friend who says you can't compare your insides to someone else's outsides.
Oh, amen.
That
is so true.
It is. And, you know, we all put our best face forward on Sunday morning, and we smile in front of the camera, even if we were just yelling at our kids threatening to spank them. If they did not smile for these family photos that are going out to everyone, you are going to smile and look like a loving family right now because the photographer's ready to take the picture. You know,
I have to kill you to get it done.
That's it. Like, we're going to have family togetherness now. Right now.
Right now. I think I've had that conversation. Real quick, Angela, I know we talked about you having some upcoming homeschooling books. Do you have a quick share before the show comes to an end today that you can tell us about what you have upcoming for homeschooling?
Sure. So the Untrained Housewife website is just more and more successful every day. You know, I have a 200% growth over the last year. So there's obviously a need for this kind of encouragement of, you know what, my mom didn't teach me how to cook either. I'm making it up as I go along too. You're not the only one. And one of the things that I'm in the process of doing is partnering with some amazing voices and really awesome authors to create a series of books that are the Untrained Housewife Guides, and in a variety of topics. The first one launched this year, and it's the Getting Prepared Guide. So it's, you know, emergency prep and that kind of thing from a really practical perspective. I had a mom of 8. She had some adopted children as well. And so, you know, she has experience of doing this as a homeschooler, as, you know, just someone who's been in the trenches, you know, from a really practical, real-life perspective. We have coming this year Home-Based Business Victory, Sensible Family Finances, and Conquering Your Kitchen are the 3 titles I've made contracts for. And I'm really hoping, you know, homeschooling is on my list of things to do, as well as the kids' crafting book, and some, you know, just that Untrained Housewife philosophy of, yes, this feels overwhelming. I know that, you know, sometimes you just look at your house and think, oh my gosh, I just want to survive today and make it to tomorrow. Like, we've all been there, and I don't think that we share that feeling enough. I think we pretend to have it all together, and then other people, when they have those moments of, I cannot do this anymore, I just want to quit, I'm going to go to bed now, wake me up when my life is over. When they have those feelings, they think there's something wrong with them. And what they don't understand is everyone has those feelings, and we're all just, you know, you push past it, you look at your kid, and you think, I'm so blessed to have these amazing little people in my life. And then you just kind of suck it up, and you move on, and you cook them dinner because that's what you have to do that day. And so, you know, if we can find ways of, you know, not making it seem so complicated, but breaking it down for people in a way that's approachable, in a way that's doable, in a way that says, you know what, don't worry about this other stuff. Just focus on this one thing first. Let's do this. You know, let's plan your garden first. How much space do you have to work with? Okay, let's plan for that. Start there. Then you can add these other, you know, complicated steps once you know how to walk. You know, walk first, then learn how to ride your bike. That's going to be a lot easier than, here's this new tricycle for this, you know, crawling toddler. You know, no, you do things in order with your kids, and I think sometimes we forget to do that as grown-ups. We forget that we had to learn how to crawl, and then we learned how to walk, and then we learned all these other things. And that was. And that is my. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm just saying, you know, that's a process, and we have to allow ourselves as grown-ups the ability to learn through a process as well. I could not agree more, and that is my mission with homeschooling, is to let newbies and veterans know that it's okay if we mess up, and it's okay if there's gaps, because that's going to be life. I hate to cut our conversation off, but I am limited in time. I want to thank you for joining me today, Angela. This has been an awesome conversation. Good. Well, thank you for having me, and love what you're doing. Oh, yeah. We'll have to get you back. And I hope that everyone that's listening today has found a way that you can work homesteading into your lessons for homeschooling. Make sure that you go over to Angela's website, backyardfarmingguide.com, and the untrainedhousewife.com. I'll have those links in the show notes.
as well as some of her awesome books, so be sure to check that out. And as always, you can find me at imperfectlyhappy.com and on facebook.com/imperfectlyhappy. Goodbye for now. Thanks again, Angela.